This is 2007's Deadly Detention. Warning, spoilers ahead. We open up to a girl running down a hallway, and a killer is following slowly while tapping his stick on prison bars. And that's it. That's the glimpse we get before jumping 3 hours in the past to a bus of delinquent children. This is gonna be a good one. On the bus are Lexi, Jessica, Barrett, Kevin, and Taylor. And it's clear that they're each full of themselves. There's also the bus driver slash security guard, Pete, who has his little own shrine at his driver's seat. The bus keeps driving farther from the center of town until it comes to an old prison facility. Once the bus parks, the kids hop off of the bus, and they know that they're in for a bad time. Inside, Ms. Presley is waiting to greet them, and she takes them to the room that they're going to be spending detention in. Pete unlocks the cell door to the room, and the kids can't believe that they're going to be spending their week in detention there instead of at school. Is this even legal, or did they just do it for the sake of making this movie? It's not a bad idea, but I'd imagine someone would definitely have a problem with this. While the kids wait in their detention room, Ms. Presley looks around until she comes to the office that she's going to be working in. She blows off the dust from the cabinet and desk before setting her bags down, and she looks around in disgust at everything she's going to have to deal with. In fact, Kevin is also spraying down his table with Germ-X after looking around. Everyone tries to get as comfortable as possible, and Lexi sits with Kevin to get the scoop on him. The most terrifying part of this movie so far is that Ms. Presley is talking to a picture of her cat and setting her desk up like she's setting up shop to be there for the rest of the school year. I don't think anyone's going to be visiting her office and taking candy from her bowl. When Ms. Presley finally goes to greet the kids, Jessica helps her by opening the door, and Presley explains that the school is being fumigated for a rabid possum problem. What? Shut the school down? Don't just do it for the weekend, that school is lost. Presley tells them the rules: no talking, no leaving the holding area, no cell phones, and they have to write an 800-word essay called The Me You Don't See. 800 words is no big deal, but what's up with the title? This is the worst detention ever. Jessica hands out the papers, and Presley takes all their phones before handing out pencils. She informs them that she'll be right across the hallway, and all she wants to hear is their pencil on the paper. Presley goes on her way, and detention starts. Lexi heads over to Taylor, and she tries to get her to talk. It proves to be a useless endeavor, and Jessica tells her to shut her mouth. Over in Presley's office, she reads an erotic novel for a moment before deciding to snoop on Barrett's phone to see the pictures that he takes. Back in the room, Lexi comes on to Barrett, and she realizes that Barrett is with Jessica at the moment. That doesn't stop Lexi from going hard at Barrett, and eventually it becomes unclear whether or not Barrett is actually interested in her advances. Meanwhile, Presley is still going through Barrett's phone, and she's getting some really risque shots. Principal of the year needs to get laid. This is probably breaking about, 4 different laws right here? At least they're already in a prison. Back in the room, Lexi decides to keep messing with Taylor, but she gets scared when Taylor snaps back. Presley hears the commotion coming from the other room, and she hides Barrett's phone in her dress. She busts her leg when she gets up to go to the other room, and after seeing who the culprit is, she gives Lexi another Saturday detention. When Presley leaves, Jessica gives Lexi a piece of her mind, but that's not enough to deter Lexi. Lexi walks out of the room and goes to Presley's office to steal from her while she's taking care of her leg. Then she grabs Presley's Principal of the Year award, and she brings it into the other room. Just then, Presley comes back, and they try to pass around the award until Presley leaves. She questions each and every one of them, though, because she suspects that someone is up to something. Now Presley breaks even more rules by demeaning Lexi and threatening to rip her piercings out while she lays in a pile of blood and regret? It's a bit extreme for a high school principal. I don't even think you can tell regular people that without getting in trouble for threatening someone. After Presley leaves, they hear her screaming in the hallway, and she's begging for them to let her in. It's too late, though. Presley's dead. What kind of detention is this that the principal can't even get into the room? While Jessica and Lexi go at each other about helping Presley, Taylor yells at them to stop while she's trying the phone on the wall. The line's dead though, and they realize that they're alone now. Jessica swears that she's going to find a way out, but suddenly the door slams shut and locks on its own. Then someone comes on over the PA system, and Taylor thinks that the prison is haunted. The voice tells them that the rules have changed, and whoever they are unlocks the doors. When Jessica steps out, she points out that Presley's body isn't outside the door, and they all creep their way out. Not before Lexi goes back for the Principal of the Year award. Once in the hallway, they notice a trail of blood, and they decide to follow it so that they can get their cell phones back from Presley. They end up back in Presley's office, and they search everything for their cell phones. When Lexi finds the box that Presley put them in, they find that it's empty, and Jessica thinks that they should just focus on finding a way out now. Watch all of this just be a really poorly thought out life lesson that Presley and Pete are trying to teach the kids. Seems cheesy enough to really try and pull that off. Taylor tells the others about a woman that was locked up here when it was still a prison for the criminally insane, and she thinks that her spirit is haunting the hall still. Lexi seems to think that all of this is Presley, though. As they make their way through the prison, they only seem to come across locked doors, but whoever's controlling the system decides to unlock one of them for them. Whoever's controlling the system ends up leading them to a storage room. As they look around the room, Jessica finally gives in and calls out Presley for pulling all of this off. Lexi then walks into a walk-in freezer, and she ends up finding Presley's body hanging inside. Taylor and Jessica help her to the ground, and they find that she doesn't have a pulse. Well, we can knock her off the suspect list. Plus, the voice calls to him while they're covering the body with Taylor's jacket. Before leaving, Kevin thinks that they should say some words about Presley before leaving, and they ask Lexi to do it. Lexi's speech is about as personal as anyone could get, but it's anything but heartfelt. After Lexi gives Presley her trophy back, they all go on their way. When they get out into the room, the controller unlocks the next door for them, and Jessica warns that something about the door doesn't feel right. Barrett jokes about the door shocking him, but the second time he grabs it, it actually does shock him. In an attempt to bring Barrett back, Lexi hops on top of him and kisses him. After he comes back to the real world, Jessica has to separate the two of them. Then she brings everyone in for a huddle, and she tells them that they have to survive this together if they're going to make it out. I'm actually starting to think that this is a comedy instead of a horror movie. It could all be the acting, it could be the writing, or I could just have a sick sense of humor. It's probably all three, though. Jessica grabs a bunch of weapons on their way out, and they go on their way. In the hall, Lexi asks Kevin why he's in detention since he's such a good boy, and he says that he's in trouble for putting graffiti on the gym wall. It turns out that most of them are there for things that they didn't actually do, though. Eventually, they end up going down the spookiest path possible, and they come face to face with a hooded man with a stake. They rush into a nearby office, and now Taylor is sure that they're dealing with a ghost. While inside the office, gas starts filling the room, and Jessica tries to cover the vents with jackets. Then Lexi notices a ceiling tile that's loose, and all of them make their way into the ceiling. This is crazy, all of this because of a crappy detention. They did get me with a jump scare when the guy started stabbing through the ceiling with his pokey stick. Good job on that one. Suddenly everyone starts falling through the ceiling, but Taylor watches as the pokey stick makes its way to her. Down on the ground, Jessica and Kevin fell right into a hallway filled with holding cells, and Lexi and Barrett fell into the cafeteria. Kevin says that he sprained his ankle in the fall, but they go silent when they hear the hooded man approaching with his pokey stick. In the cafeteria, Barrett pulls out a flask, and Lexi takes a big swig of whatever it is he brought. Then the two of them talk about whether dying will hurt or not, and Lexi points out that she wants to be wasted when she goes. Then she looks at him longingly, and Barrett picks up the hint. Classic horror movie. Even when facing death, there's always time for a quick screw. This movie really goes back to its horror roots. Even the killer is kind enough to let them get a little steamy. While Lexi and Barrett are getting horny in the cafeteria, Jessica and Kevin are running for their life. Eventually, Jessica and Kevin run into a dead end, and Lexi and Barrett finish within seconds. Kevin tries to ask Jessica if she's scared at all, but she points out that being scared means that you're weak. She's more upset about running into a dead end than anything. So she punches a wall. The little She-Hulk really tried to smash her way out of there. It doesn't work like that. This killer's really generous. He gave them all this time to sit there and have a heart-to-heart, and he gave Lexi and Barrett enough time to finish. Kevin tries to build Jessica back up, and eventually she gets her drive to continue. Meanwhile, Barrett wants to go again with Lexi, and she's down for it. We get a glimpse of the killer as he stalks Jessica and Kevin, but he loses them as they hide up on the phone booth. After he leaves, they go on the run again, but Kevin can only hobble since his ankle is sprained. After a while, he gives up and goes another direction. When Jessica turns around, she notices that he's missing and she runs back to look for him. Eventually, the killer catches up to Kevin, and he knows that he's been found. He spins around, and the screen cuts to black. Jessica keeps yelling for any of the others, and she runs into the cafeteria to find Lexi and Barrett getting their clothes back on. They literally didn't bother to try and cover it up. His face has more lipstick on it than Lexi had on her mouth originally. Jessica calls them out for being too busy to get it on instead of finding a way out to save Kevin, and Lexi tells her that she wishes it was her instead. Barrett, on the other hand, ends up burning both bridges with Jessica and Lexi before going his own way in the prison. As the girls head back to the holding area, Barrett checks himself out in the reflection of the glass, and the hooded killer shows up behind him. The killer smashes his head through the glass, and the girls run back after hearing the sound. They find him dead, and Jessica thinks that it's time to figure out who's doing this to them. They both grab kitchen utensils to defend themselves, and Jessica stops in the hallway to do her pump-up routine. Yeah, this has gotta be a comedy. I've definitely laughed more than I've been scared. Actually, aside from that one jump scare, this whole movie's been one trippy comedy. Eventually, they come across Kevin's Bible, and they know that he's gone. As the girls make it further into the prison, the voice calls over the PA again. But this time, the girls aren't intimidated by it. Suddenly, they get to the control room, and they find the hooded figure talking into the microphone. They creep underneath the window, and Lexi looks inside. She finds a shrine set up, but soon the hooded man comes out. The girls attack him, but they're no match for his strength. As he goes to deal with the girls, he closes Jessica's head inside the cell doors as they close, and he grabs Lexi to throw her into a chair in front of the shrine. When he removes his hood, we see that it's Pete. That's a little cliche, but you've gotta love the small cast list. Now, I'm really curious as to how they tie him to everything. You'll love this though. He's the one that snuck 50 rabid possums into the school. That alone is an impressive feat. Pete made sure that all of the kids would be in detention, and he hints that these are her last moments. Lexi tries to plead for her life, but Pete definitely isn't having this. What really sets in is the fact that Lexi doesn't even know his name. Here's the big connection. The girl that was killed was actually Pete's daughter. Okay, this is really starting to feel like a convoluted Star Wars plot. Apparently his daughter was ashamed to call him her dad at school because she was worried about what all the other cliques would think of her. Pete points out that none of it matters in the end. It's thanks to their bullying that she's dead now, and he starts choking Lexi. While he's choking her, he ends up finding a locket that came from his daughter, and she points out that they were best friends. She tells him that she remembers seeing the bruises on his daughter, and he gets furious with her. Suddenly, Presley shows up and knocks Pete out, and Lexi thinks that she's a zombie. I can't blame her. At this point, I don't know which way they're gonna go. Also, Pete is either a really soft bad guy or just bad at his job. Presley tells Lexi that she checked everyone's pulses, and they're actually going to be okay after a trip to the ER. Then the credits roll. What was that? This was bad. At some points, it was so bad that I actually thought it was entertaining, but that's about it. If you're looking for a cheesy, ridiculously bad B-horror flick, this is it. So if that's the case, give it a shot. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.